everybody, welcome back to part 13 of the Tamiya 132 scale Mosquito build. In this video I'm going to be building the nose gun bay. That's got the 4 303 machine guns in it, and for that assembly I'll be using the brass-in detail set, so I won't be bothering with any of the Tamiya parts really. I don't think there are any Tamiya parts to go in this part of the assembly. I've also got some master gun barrels that I'll be adding to the Edward resin parts, just to improve the look of those. I think the metal barrels in this case do look better than the resin ones, so I'll be doing that as well. So there's no real cutting and modifying to do this week. It's just a case of putting the brass-in parts together, quite a bit of detail painting, and some of the parts are pretty small as well, so it'll be a bit of a test of the eyesight. So with the camera over at the bench, I'll show you how all that went together. Okay, so let's make a start this week and go into the brass-in set. This is the second of 2 brass-in sets that I've used on the kit. The first being the engine set, which if you've been watching the series you'll know I didn't fully go through with because of problems with the fit. The cannon bay, which comes in this second set, went in reasonably well last week. So we'll see if we can get this nose gun bay to fit as well. That's what I'm going to be concentrating on for the rest of this video. I will just assemble the Tamiya equivalent parts as I did with the cannon bay, just for a comparison really, but I'm pretty sure this will fit. I'm not anticipating any difficulties with this, so fingers crossed. The other item I'm going to be using is this set of brass barrels from the master set. Last time I decided not to use the cannons that are supplied in this set as well. I didn't think there were an improvement over the Tamiya, but these barrels for the 303s are a definite improvement, so I will be using them. So let's take a look at what we're doing this time with the brass-in set. So quite a number of instruction stages, although there aren't too many parts in the set. Ammunition boxes, ammunition feeds, 1 or 2 other bits and pieces, and the 303s are supplied as well. So these are the 303s supplied in the brass-in set, and you can see looking at them from above how twisted they are straight from the packet. So if they were installed in the aircraft, it wouldn't be able to hit much, I don't think. Be shooting around a corner. But there is a solution for it if I were going to retain these, and that is to just warm them in some warm water. And resin has a memory, I suppose you'd call it, for the mould that it was created in, and warming it up, warming the part up in some warm water enables it to go back to its original state. Well, that's the theory anyway. I'm going to try it with these just to see if that theory works, even though I'll be replacing these resin blast tubes and barrels with the brass ones from the master set. So it's just a little experiment really. So I'll leave those in some hot water for 5 minutes or so. They are straightening actually. I can see already that they're coming back into shape, but we'll just leave them to rest for a while. In the meantime, I'll look at the other pair of guns and get them ready to accept the master barrels. These are the parts from the master set. So each gun comes in 3 separate parts. The inboard guns are slightly different to the outboard ones in that they've got these longer tubes at the base of the gun, or at the base of the barrel. Apart from that, they're the same. This is the actual gun barrel and muzzle, and we have the blast tube, which is perforated, which is an improvement on the resin parts and the Tamiya parts, obviously. So they go over the barrel like that. And then the base of the gun goes all the way through like that. So we'll have to cut these resin barrels off, drill them out in order to fit the brass assembly. So I'll do one at a time. We'll just remove the machine gun from the block. I'll just wet sand the rear side of the casting block. Just getting the cut nice and square there, just so that the barrel sits in a straight line really. I don't need kinking. So that's all we're left with on the resin breech for the gun. So I want to drill the end of the resin out here to accept the brass barrel. I'm just going to centre the hole with a needle. Okay, so that's a nice fit. It's reasonably tight in there. I'll be super gluing those on anyway, so they'll be fine. The big improvement is in the sharpness of the detail really, even over the resin, and the hollow cutouts in the blast tube are also an improvement, obviously. So that looks nice. Just prep this other inboard gun to start with, and then we'll have a look at how we're doing with the straightening those resin barrels, our little experiment. I'm just using a little saw there just to remove some flash just at the back of the breech. There's what looks like a lifting handle or something like that. I'm not sure what it is, but it just stands up from the gun. So that's the inboard breeches prepared. Just take a look at these resin parts now, see if they've straightened up any. So they're a bit better. They're still a bit off centre, but they're better than they were. I'd still have a bit of concern about using them, I think. But anyway, we don't have to. We've got these brass ones. So these are done in exactly the same way. They're just a slightly shorter barrel on them. The guns are all, the pairs of guns are numbered differently because they've got the ammunition feeds on one side or another. So we just need to be reminded of that when we come to put them into the aeroplane. So at this stage I'll glue the brass barrels onto the breeches. It just gives me something to hold on to whilst I come to add the rest of the details to the breeches. Edward in the instructions here illustrate the 4 machine guns separately because of the positioning of the ammunition feeds and so on, and the detail on the breeches. So there are 4 individual guns to make here. So just need to be careful to get the correct positioning of them. So just some medium super glue just to attach the barrel. Just making sure that the barrel is straight from above and from the side as well. So that's all 4 barrels fitted, nice and straight, with some much improved detail on them as well. So let's get the rest of the resin, and there's 1 or 2 bits of etched brass as well to fit on these. Starting with some etched brass. This is all provided in the Edward set, in the brassing set. These are the mountings for the guns, and again they're all separately numbered, so I'll just take care to get them onto the correct gun. I'll just take them off one by one. So I'm ready to fit the mountings now, but just before I do that, just a note that in that last section where I was fitting these end plates, I'd actually got them upside down in that sequence. So I've had to remove them all and fit them the correct way up. So that's set me back 20 minutes or so. But now I can go ahead and fit the mountings onto the underside. And these are all individual parts, so they've all got to be fitted to the correct gun. So I'm just taking care to concentrate a little bit more than I did earlier on in the video when I was fitting these back parts. So again, we've got to be careful with these parts, which are the spent cartridge chutes. There are two types. So I'm just trying to keep these guns in order A, B, C, D as they appear in the brassing instructions here. It's just to reduce the chance of getting the parts mixed up. I don't have to tell you what the weather's like today. It's raining very heavily at the moment. So it's not a bad day to be in at the modelling bench. It's an excuse not to do any gardening anyway. That's the ejector chutes all fitted on now. Next up, we'll take a look at the mountings for the guns. So these are provided in resin as well. There's the wide one which goes at the rear of the gun bay, and this narrower one fitting at the front. So I'll just clean this second one up. And I think it'll probably be a good idea to check the fit of these mountings into the gun bay of the aeroplane. So I'll bring the aeroplane over and we'll check out the fit of these onto the these two mounting rails. So all this work to fit the gun bay was done quite a while ago now, right at the beginning of the build when I joined the fuselage together. And I wanted to do that just to make sure that this was all going to fit nice and snug into the Tamiya fuselage. The bulkhead here is from the brassing set, the one that I'm using at the moment. The floor is the Tamiya part with just some extra detailing added to the firing mechanisms here at the bottom. So I just want to check the fit of the mountings into the bay. Okay, so these are the mountings, the resin mountings from the brassing set. There's one goes at the front and one at the back of the gun bay. And I've test fitted these into the bay and against the fit of the individual machine guns. And it's okay, so I'm going to go ahead and paint these, get them fitted into the gun bay, and then we can think about painting the guns and getting those fitted as well. All the ammunition boxes and the ammunition feeds go on top of the assembly. So the first thing to do is to get these guns in. Tamiya, I think, have you painting these cross members, these mountings in green. But Edward have you paint these in silver, so I'm going to go with the Edward instructions. Whilst I've got the airbrush out, I'll also prime the individual machine guns ready for their first coats of paint. This is just a little bit of Tamiya black panel line wash. Just adds a bit of definition to these parts. They've gone in eventually. They were a bit of a struggle, to be honest. They didn't fit perfectly into the slots that Tamiya provided, but they've gone in eventually. I'll just check the fit of the guns again. These have had a coat of primer now and they've come up really nicely. Detail on those is lovely. They're a bit uneven at the minute, but the nose cone will bring them back into position, I think. Yeah, so I think that's going to work. Okay, so I'm going to paint the guns now and get those fitted. So I'm going to start off with some dark iron for the breeches, and then we'll pick out some other details in some different colours. So I'll get the dark iron on first. Be using a Tamiya lacquer paint for that. Okay, so the dark iron's been sprayed on, the Tamiya lacquer. I'll just pick out some contrasting colours now. Edward call out silver for the mountings. I'm just going to use some Tamiya lacquer matte aluminium or flat aluminium. With all the detail painting of the guns done, can do the fitting now. I'm not actually going to glue the guns onto the mountings. There should be enough contact point just by using the holes that go into the floor of the gun bay. Okay, so they appear to be aligned pretty well. Gone in nicely, they're nice and firm. Yeah, so they're a nice fit, they've gone in okay. So I'm happy with those. Okay, so the gun's safely installed. I'm happy with those. Can now have a look at the ammunition boxes and the ammunition feeds and see if we can get those done. The next job is to start with the ammunition boxes. They fit just above the guns here in the gun bay, and they fit onto the brass in bulkhead that I fitted quite a while ago, up towards the beginning of the series. The parts do need a bit of modification to get them to fit though. The attachment here at the back of the ammunition box is a bit wide for the brackets at the top of the bulkhead, so they just need trimming off a little bit. The other thing that I've got to be careful with here is that these ammunition boxes come in two styles, so we get two of each style. So I'm just going to have to mark them up for one number to the other when I've cut them off the casting block, so I don't get them mixed up. So I'll get the second of the R33s off the block. Cutting a resin part like this, where we want to get a nice flat bottom to the part, I find the easiest way to achieve that is to go all the way around the casting and just saw a line around the bottom edge, just like that, all the way around. And that just helps keep the sew on line really. Otherwise it's very easy to slightly angle the blade and you come through on the other side of the part and cut too much off. You can do. Whereas this tends to help guide the blade a little bit. And that should just leave a minimum of sanding at the bottom, just in the centre of the part where we've cut it. Just a gentle sand at the bottom there, just to get rid of the remaining casting block. And that means that the part's nice and square all the way around. So they're fitting quite nicely actually. So for the two that match, I'm just going to score a mark at the bottom where we can't see the mark. That'll just identify those two particular boxes for the outboard side of the gun bay. So I'll cut these other two blocks off and then we can add some of the photo etch in the Edward set. The first piece of photo etch is this little bracket. This just goes on the front of the box there, and these brackets just secure the front of the ammunition belt, which feeds into the top here, Next we have a strap which goes over the top of the ammunition box. So that just needs bending into a curved shape. I'll do that over the handle of this file. It's more or less the same diameter. We can reshape these once the two sides of the strap are fixed fairly securely to the ammunition box. Let's get it in place first, and then we can just adjust the loop afterwards. Okay, they're ready for some primer and painting. These ammunition boxes have got quite a few decals on them, so it'll be the routine of primer, interior green, gloss coat for the decals, followed by a flat coat and then a bit of dry brushing. Those are the ammunition boxes. The next thing I want to just prepare whilst I get ready to do the painting sequences are the ammunition feeds. So these are quite complex shapes. They come off the front of the ammunition box and twist around onto the breech, the side of the breech of the individual guns. So we've got different shapes, each one is individual, and they come like this in the brass inset, so quite a bit of cleanup needed, and they need to be removed very carefully from the casting blocks because they're quite thin. They're much more to scale than the Tamiya parts, but they're correspondingly easy to break. So some gentle, careful work with a knife and sanding stick, a small sanding stick, just to get rid of the excess resin that we don't need. They really do need handling very carefully. They'd be very easy to snap. And if that happened, I think they'd be reasonably difficult to repair, to get them to the correct shape and not spoil the detail of the bullets on the feed here. So I've got all the feeds prepped. I'm not too concerned about getting those mixed up. They'll only go onto one gun, and I think it'll be pretty obvious when we come to it which gun they go on, so I'm not worried about that. So these are all going to go over for some primer now. So whilst I've got the primer out, I'll also do the nose of the aeroplane here, which has also got some detailing in it. This is provided in the Tamiya kit, this surround, but I'm going to use the Edward one. And we also have the gun camera to install as well in here. The bracket can go in first. This is the mounting for the gun camera. this surround wasn't fitting just then because there's just a tiny stub of the fret left on it, and it was just preventing it sitting where it needs to go. So if we just get rid of those, it's just going to get the part into the correct position. Well, I'm making a meal of this really. I'm sure it'll fit eventually. So I'm not going to risk taking that out again. I'll just secure it with some extra thin super glue around the back. Okay, that's not going to go anywhere now. So all these parts are ready for some paint. I'll get them over to the paint booth and get the first colours on them. Bit of detail painting now, and just picking out the 303 rounds with some brass. This is some panel line accent colour. This is black. Just got a tiny bit too much on that. The ammunition boxes have had a coat of gloss coat, so that will be okay for the decals and also this wash. Just to dirty them up a little bit. Yes, that's the wash on. I'll let that dry. It's a bit harsh at the minute, so I'll have to come with a cotton bud and remove some of that. But I'll let it dry first, otherwise we'll just wipe it all off. So just give that an hour or so to fully go off, and then we'll come and give them a clean up. This is brown panel line accent colour. Just run into the ammunition feed belts, just accentuates the rounds in the feed. That's better than just having the brass in there. It does add a bit more definition. Now I'm just going to clean up the excess wash on these ammunition boxes. Just use some white spirit or mineral spirit. So just a cotton bud here, very lightly moistened with some of that spirit, just to remove the excess wash that we've got on these parts. Whether you can hear the lambs out in the field, they're making quite a noise this evening. It must be feeding time, I think. So the next thing to do is to add some decals to the parts that we've just painted, which are here provided in the Edward set. So I'll do those next, and then I'll leave them to dry. Once they're dry, we can mat these ammunition boxes down and do a bit of dry brushing, and then they'll be ready to fit into the gun bay. At this stage, you've just got to be careful with the number of the ammunition box. So obviously they're just numbered 1 to 4, starboard to port, because some of the decals are handed. So for example, this one here, this tiny one, illustrates the way that the bullets or rounds are loaded into the ammunition box. It's a very tiny detail, but it's worth getting it the right way around. So this is number 1 ammunition box, and the rounds are loaded in that direction. This is just some microset, by the way. That's all I'm using on these. I'll just let those first 2 set up for a few minutes. These are obviously very tiny decals. So I suppose they're barely visible actually, but they are there. The ammunition feeds are all numbered also. And here obviously these are all individual, they're all unique, so we need to get the correct number on the correct feed. I think I said earlier that the number 1 gun was on the starboard side. It's not, it's on port. So there we've got the 4 feeds. 1, 2, 3, 4. I hope I've got them in the right order. Guess we'll see when we come to fit them. The ammunition boxes are also numbered in the same way. I think these will be fairly difficult to see actually. They go underneath the strap that we fitted. This particular decal goes on different sides of different boxes, so again just check the numbering of them. Got that one upside down. Notice that in time I don't have a spare. Some of these decals have spares provided, but not that one. So it was a good job I noticed that. Okay, so that's all the decals fitted. They need to be left to dry for, well, I'm going to leave them overnight, and then that should give them plenty of time to set up. I've just applied a little bit of Mark Fit Strong on the decals at the top here where they've got to conform to a plaque. So that'll just help them settle down overnight. Once they're dry, I can give them a coat of flat varnish. We can do a bit of dry brushing to accentuate the highlights. And then we can put them into the gun bay. Okay, so the decals that I fitted last night have dried. So I want to get these in a coat of flat varnish. We can do a bit of dry brushing to highlight those details. And I can then put them in the gun bay and do any last bits and pieces on them. Okay, they've come out really nice. There's no trace of silvering on the decals, which is good. I used some Alclad clear coat flat on those. It's my preferred finish. This is a pure flat. I often use a semi-matte or a light sheen on the airframe. I think that's what I'll be doing later on in the build. But for all the interior parts I've been using the pure flat. Now I'll do a bit of dry brushing, and for that on this model I've been using XF76. It's a lighter shade of the cockpit green. You can see the two there. This is XF71. So it's a lot greyer and a lot paler. And actually someone pointed out quite rightly when I built the cockpit in an earlier episode that the XF71 on its own is too green, and suggested that I used a Humbrol colour, I think it was, which is an enamel, and I don't use enamels for the base coats on my models. But they were correct in saying that the Tamiya cockpit green is too green. But this grey-green shade does lighten the final finish up quite a bit and makes it greyer. So it brings it more into line with RAF interior green. So with all that dry brushing done, I'm happy with how they've turned out, so we can get these boxes installed now. So just a bit of super glue on the back face. I'm not going to attempt to actually cement these to the brackets, if you like. The key thing here is getting these all nicely spaced and level, which is easier said than done. But we have to do that, not just for appearance sake, but because there's a bar which runs all the way along the front. I'm supposed to lock the ammunition boxes in. And it'll be difficult to fit that bar along the front if the boxes are not lined up properly. So after quite a bit of fiddling around, I've got the boxes in. Now there's a bar to go across the front of the 4 boxes just to, I suppose, bind them together. So I'm going to use some stainless wire for that. Okay, now we'll try and get the ammunition feeds on. So I'm hoping these will go on without any bother. And all I'm going to do here is just fix them to the top of the ammunition box. I'm not going to attempt to put any glue on the gun itself. Actually, it's going to need a bit because it's springing away, so just move that onto the breech. Okay, they've gone in. So a little bit of touch up here and there, I think, on those. I've given them a couple of scratches in a couple of places, but it's not too bad. Okay, so I think we'll call that done for this week. That's come out pretty nicely, I think. It's quite a bit more complex to put that together than the Tamiya equivalent, I think. But overall, I'd say it's worth it. It's quite a bit of an improvement over the Tamiya assembly. And having done all that work, what we could do is just cover it all up with the nose panel. And actually, I'm going to leave the nose loose for the moment because I want to paint it beforehand. I think it'd be quite difficult to mask around these machine gun barrels. I will be weathering it and fitting it later along with the panel on the underside with the cannon muzzles on it. So I'll get some photographs of that for the end of the video. And we'll call that done for this week. Okay, so that's it for another week and another part of the assembly done. I'll be putting the machine gun bay cover on, I think, for the rest of the assembly, or at least for the foreseeable future, just to protect that assembly. It's fairly delicate, some of the parts, with all those little chains and things on the ammunition box, so that'll just give it a bit of protection. Next time I probably want to get some of the cowlings sorted out just to check them for fit. I also want to do the flaps. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to have them dropped or in the neutral position. There's some panels to go on around that as well, and I'll also build the fin and the rudder. So really get the rest of the airframe put together. We'll have a look at the undercarriage bay doors and the bomb bay doors as well. So really getting the model into a state where we can start to think about some final paint finishes on it. So I'll get that done over the next few days, and I'll bring you that progress next week in part 14 on Friday night as usual as a premiere. So I hope you can join me for that one. In the meantime, everybody, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you in another few days. Bye for now.